Let me introduce myself. I'm Holly Hughes. I'm the editorial director of the Photo Plus Group.
Yay!
Which means I get to work with the talented staff at PDN EDU, the student publication. And thanks so much to Nikon and your support of emerging photographers and Nikon's dedication to helping photographers learn more about the business as well as creative storytelling and succeed as photographers in this tough market. We have some copies of the Nikon-sponsored PDN EDU. I think if you're politely sitting, it means you're sitting on them. Thanks very much. The topic today, sustaining your career. These are three terrific panelists, I think, to be talking about it. Each of them have worked creatively, continue to experiment, and continue to push themselves both creatively, technically, and into new markets. I'm going to ask them to each introduce themselves. And as we start thinking about what it really means to have a sustainable career, that is not only to launch your career, but to continue feeling professionally, financially, creatively satisfied, I think what you're going to be hearing a lot about is how important it's been for each of these photographers to find a niche, to find the work that they are particularly suited to do and that particularly appeals to them. So with that, when I ask you to introduce yourselves, panelists, I'm going to ask you to not only say your name, but also what is it that you think sets you apart, or what do your clients come to you for? Deanne, can you introduce yourself first? Who are you?
Yes, hello. My name is Deanna Fitzmaurice, and I'm a photojournalist based in San Francisco. I think the thing about my work that sets me apart is clients come to me for behind-the-scenes, personal, intimate stories. For example, when I do a shoot for ESPN, they don't want the action. They want to know who is the athlete off the field.
I think we're going to see some very human images that Deanne has taken throughout her career. And you, Dixie, who are you?
Absolutely. Hi, guys. I'm Dixie Dixon. I'm a fashion and lifestyle advertising photographer based out of Dallas, and I travel worldwide. Gosh, that's a very good question. I think that my clients really love the experience that I create on set. Everyone has a lot of fun, and we create some really beautiful images, so that always keeps the clients coming back. So I think a lot of it is that, as well as the images and just having a blast on set.
So interesting. I think it's good to point out there's so much more to being a professional photographer than just great image making. You're responsible for so much more that you're delivering to clients. And you, sir, who I go back with a ways, who are you?
I'm Matthew Jordan Smith. I'm a commercial photographer. I paid him for that. I think it's been all about the relationship and definitely making a connection with your clients. The one thing that's helped me have a career all these years is that relationship. It never goes away.
All these years, how long have you been doing this, Matthew?
30 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Deanne, something you said to me the other day was that finding your own photographic voice is important. And this is a question, of course, I want each of you to address, but why? Why is that important to you, do you think, for a sustainable career?
If you're doing work that you care about, that you're passionate about, it's not work, it's fun. And I think it's important to be in tune to that, to think about what you're drawn to. Find those stories that you care about, something that matter to you, things that mean something to you, and go towards them and create a personal project out of it. And it's incredible what that can lead to. Before long, you have clients coming to you and asking you to shoot things that you're already shooting because you love it. It's what you're passionate about.
To that point, can I ask Dixie and Matthew, how often are you shooting? How much of your time do you spend shooting just for yourself?
Ooh. Ladies first?
Yes, as much as possible. That's really how I built my career, is shooting personal work. And when you show the type of work that you actually want to be shooting, people will start hiring you to shoot that kind of work. So even if you're shooting, say, weddings or portraits to pay the bills, but you really want to break into the fashion industry, only show the fashion work on your website, even though you're shooting all kinds of different work to obviously pay your bills. So yeah, I think that's a really big part of it.
To expand on that even more, to expand on that even more, it's so important for you to really find your voice as a photographer. I think that's the beginning for every photographer. It's the end-all, be-all. You must find your voice. There are billions of people taking pictures in the world today, but nobody sees the world the way you do. That will change, it will give you a career. So start off by finding your voice.
And you do that through shooting, right?
Absolutely.
So, Deanne, you mentioned that it's really been about finding the stories that are important to you, and you brought together a collection of stories from throughout your career. Can you talk a little bit about why they meant something to you or how you found them?
Sure. This first image of a windshield, I was on assignment in Wyoming, and it was a story about mineral rights. And if oil is found under your property, who owns it, the rancher or the government? So I spent the day with this rancher on a cattle drive. And at the end of the day, I was really dissatisfied with what I had. I didn't feel like I had a good picture. So I jumped in my car to start driving away. I looked in my rear view mirror, and this is what I saw. So that is my back window with the scene. So I just stopped my car, jumped in the back seat, and shot that. But it's really, for me, layering storytelling images in a visually interesting way.
So you mean you're trying to find multiple angles on the story that you're trying to tell, or is it really important for you to try to get an image like that completely symbolized so much in one image?
Yeah, sometimes I do a story where it's more of a photo essay and I'm telling stories in multiple images, but I still try to have each individual image tell a story as much as possible.
And this, I assume, is Cuba?
Yeah, that's Cuba, and again, that is a layered image. Sometimes it takes patience, and I just waited a long time for all these elements to come together. I'm looking at every edge of the picture, every corner. In Cuba, I also shot this photo. There's limited Wi-Fi in Havana, but there's this one corner where there was a signal, and these two young women were sitting there, and people came up to me afterwards and they said, "That picture is brilliant, that you found a street sign that said Amistad," because in Spanish that means friendship. I'd like to say I had thought about that, but I hadn't.
Good message there about the lucky accident, I guess.
Luck is definitely a part of it. This is a picture that I shot. We've all heard about the wildfires that just happened in Northern California. They're right in my neighborhood. They're really close to where I live, so I felt compelled to go out and tell that story, to tell the human impact of this story. So many people have lost their homes, people have lost their lives, and that's one of those personal project things. I just said I have to go. I was compelled to go, and there was no way I could not go.
I'm sorry that I was going to ask you a question about researching your stories, but I'm sorry to say that one didn't need much research.
No.
This is a cool project of yours I'm familiar with.
Yeah, a woman from a nonprofit reached out to me and asked me to photograph modern-day Rosie the Riveters, women that are working in the manufacturing of buses and trains and transportation infrastructure throughout the United States. And it was a great project, and I had asked her, I said, "Well, how'd you find me?" And she said she just Googled famous women photographers. So
That's you, Deanne.
Thank you. It was a great project, and it was exhibited in a few different cities, including in New York just earlier this year.
That's an amazing break, but can you just explain a little bit to people that you were at one time, you're a prize-winning journalist who worked for a newspaper. Is it very, very different to be showing these projects as a freelancer to clients?
Yeah, well, it's a major transition going from being a staff photographer to being a freelance photographer, completely different. I mean, on staff, there are all kinds of great benefits, including benefits, and, car, equipment, and, weekly paycheck. But going to freelance, I love the challenge of it. I've been freelance since 2008, and I had to figure it all out. I had to figure out how to run a business, the networking, and everything that these two have been doing for so long. And it's different, but challenging. The picture that you just had up there, that's a long-term project. I've been working on this project for 14 years. And this is the project that won the Pulitzer in 2005. I started in 2003, and I'm still photographing this boy. He's 23 now and just got married.
Wow.
And this is some work that I did in Kenya. I was working with a documentary film crew on a story about women and girls working their way out of the slum. So I just was trying to tell the human story of what they were going through. And this is also part of that project. And I think there's something to getting up early. This is sunrise.
That's always good advice. I have to say, this is, in some ways, the kind of work that you've now become your trademark, kind of, right? This kind of behind-the-scenes thing?
Yeah, behind the scenes in sports has become a thing. And that all came about early on. I did a project with Barry Bonds, and I was able to break through this wall that he puts up around himself and able to capture some human moments with him. And because I did that, Sports Illustrated reached out to me and asked me to start doing some work like this for them and ESPN. And so it's been a big part of my editorial work that I do. These clients calling me, and they don't call me to shoot action. They call me to do these behind-the-scenes stories, these real human, personal stories.
The other photographers on the panel are nodding. Are you nodding because of the persistence that Deanne put in? Is that an important element that you're responding to when you're talking about careers? Or are you nodding because you appreciate that kind of setting yourself apart is what helped her get attention from other clients?
I think it's a little bit of both, actually. But the fact that she's going behind the scenes, it is that human element that we all love, and she enjoys it.
Yeah.
She's found her niche.
But now here's a non-human photo of goats in a tree, Deanne, for a nice cap.
Well, one thing I want to mention, I'm sitting here with Dixie and with Matthew. They are known, they're top of their field in doing beautiful images. My work is not beautiful, generally. The work that I do in the fires, the work that I do in, with injured children, but they're stories that I feel are important to tell. So I think it's important that you all find work that's meaningful to you, and what Matthew was talking about earlier about finding your voice, because to me, I need to be doing these kind of stories about social stories and and I don't know how to shoot beautiful photographs like they do. And again, another tip to get up early in the morning. It says sunrise in Morocco.
Deanne, I think it's beautiful. There, I feel the need to tell you it's beautiful. So, do you have advice for people who are not in Kenya, they're not near a forest fire? Do you have advice for young photographers about finding those stories and researching them?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of my stories have been in my own backyard. For example, the 14-year story about the Iraqi boy. I was able to tell a story of the war in my own backyard. I'm based in San Francisco, and this boy was in Oakland. So So that was an example of finding it's like a big topic, but it was in my neighborhood. The fires that I'm doing, there's a big important story about how weather is affecting us with tragedies and how it's impacting human lives. And I'm showing that right now in my own neighborhood. So I think what you have to do is really just be really in tune to what you care about, what's important to you. You're going to be noticing things, and you'll read something in the paper or you'll hear about something, and it affects you. And that is the story that you should go do. We all have those stories, but it's intimidating. How do you even start? How do you even approach people? For example, with the fires, people were coming back to their homes, and it was just ash. They had completely lost their homes, and I had to go up and talk to them on what was likely the worst day of their lives, and it took courage to do that. But once I met one person, he introduced me to someone else, who introduced me to someone else, and that just kept going. So,
something that occurs to me is about this kind of sense of exploration that segues nicely to you, Dixie, is that you're kind of now known for one thing, but at one time, in your learning, your apprenticing, you were apprenticing to different photographers and trying different things. Isn't that right? So
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about how, you didn't just find your thing and stay put. You've continued to evolve. So can you talk a little bit about learning those different things?
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you guys a funny story. Matthew was speaking at a PBA event, I don't know, how many years ago was it?
Oh my God, that was 10 years ago?
I think it was 10 years ago. And he had this huge crowd. There was probably 200, 300 people there. And I remember standing in line waiting to talk to him for 30 or 40 minutes. I was like the last little girl in line. I was so excited. I was so nervous to talk to him after his speech because I was so inspired by his photography. So I remember talking with you, and I remember asking if I could assist him when I'm in LA next time. So he said, of course, you can assist me. Fast forward, I think it was a few weeks. I booked a trip to LA to do some meetings, and I emailed Matthew and I said, hey, can I assist you this week? Are you shooting in LA? And he said, actually, yes, I am shooting in LA, and he let me come and assist him on some beauty work for a week, and that's been some of the best experiences that I've ever had. Just getting to see Matthew work in the studio and be inspired, and you were so welcoming, and it's made such a huge impact on my career. And one of the things is he reviewed my portfolio as well. And you were so positive. I was just out of college, really green, but he gave me a lot of great tips and said, keep going for it. And it just has made such a huge impact on my career.
Thank you.
So it's cool how those things come to be. So definitely reach out to the people that inspire you. Try to assist. Try to get out there and assist the people that you love. And it can really, really be a great impact in your career.
Absolutely.
And so what were you hoping to learn, or how did apprenticing, because that's what it is, apprenticeship for different photographers, how did that train you or prepare you or teach you what you wanted to be shooting?
Absolutely. I really love Matthew's lighting. He is a master of light. And that's what I really was inspired by, to learn the beautiful beauty lighting, because I am all about the beauty, bringing out the best in my subjects. So with Matthew, I was able to learn beauty lighting and bring that to life. So that was really helpful. I've also done other assistantships. For instance, I assisted a wedding photographer in college. Every single weekend, I would be, shooting all day for literally $100 a day. To just do assisting in weddings. And I realized in that moment, sometimes your biggest lesson is learning what you don't want to shoot. I am not passionate about shooting weddings, and I discovered that through shooting weddings. And I missed the kiss at multiple weddings. I realized it was not my forte. So I kind of veered out of that and went to portraits and events, and then I ended up studying abroad with a fashion photographer in London. This is actually before I worked with Matthew in LA, and that's when I really fell in love with fashion photography. So I kind of shot it all in order to decide what I really loved and what I was truly, truly passionate about. I think a lot of people, it takes a little while to figure out what your passion is in photography, and once you figure that out, then stick with it and shoot a ton of that and create a body of work around that. So.
One thing I think it's important to note about you is you studied business. How has that been helpful in a creative field like photography?
Yeah, absolutely. I went to TCU, Go Horned Frogs. I studied entrepreneurship, actually, because I figured that I could learn photography in the field, and the business side was something that I really needed to learn in order to actually make a living doing photography, because there are so many things involved in photography that are not shooting related. The creativity and the shoot days are the fun days. The other days I'm spending at doing accounting, doing emails, doing pre-production work, post-production work, editing, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, it's endless the jobs that we have as a photographer.
Absolutely.
It's crazy to try to balance it all. And it's been a struggle for me, I think, to balance time-wise how to balance all these things. But it definitely has been very helpful. So if you guys could take a business class, and while you're getting into photography, it's really extremely helpful, especially the marketing. When I was starting out, I was bartering a lot of services. I couldn't afford an accountant or anything like that, so I would barter services with them. And they would get a family portrait, give me some great accounting services, and you kind of start out that way. So now I have a really great team that I work with on a normal basis.
So tell us a little bit about your marketing. Do you, or actually I'll just open this up to all three of you. Do you guys have a preferred method for getting in touch with clients or sharing the latest work that you do? What's yours, Dixie?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that when you can get an in-person meeting, you're a lot more likely to book a job.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right? Emails can only go so far, and people like to work with people they actually know and enjoy working with. So if you can get to know the people that you want to work with, that's going to make a lot bigger impact on them, and they're going to be a lot more likely to hire you.
Especially today.
Yes.
Especially today.
To make a personal connection versus
Absolutely.
all that other stuff. And so, Dixie, about that, because I'm coming up on some of your commercial work here, is that how you're... Again, are you pitching the personal work that you're always working on, or do you take them like the last assignments that you just did and bring those to new ad agency and art directors for commercial jobs?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Most of the work that I am shooting commercially, they will come to me with a concept and idea to bring to life. My biggest passion is bringing brands' visions to life. I like to get to know the brand almost like a person. So the fonts they use, the colors they use, the talent that they kind of want to embody. So a lot of it is they come to me with an idea and I execute it. And then sometimes, recently I had the opportunity to photograph supermodel Kathy Ireland, who's been on 13 consecutive Sports Illustrated covers. And I actually met her at a dinner, and I pitched her this idea to do these beautiful portraits of her that are inspired by Bert Stearns' images of Marilyn Monroe. So she actually said yes, and so I ended up flying out to LA and photographing her for this personal project that I really wanted to do, and this turned into a gallery show that just opened last week. So it's crazy how it's a little bit of both, and how personal projects can really transform your career. So always be shooting personal work.
Talk about the books and exhibits.
We're talking about the book?
And exhibits.
Okay. It's funny, when I was working with Matthew, he said, you need to eventually do a book and a gallery show. And it's crazy because the book just released last week. I just wrote a fashion photography book on how to break into commercial and fashion photography. It's a how-to book, and it's basically everything I've learned in the past 10 years of shooting. So yeah, it's been a crazy, surreal adventure.
So in other words, Matthew, you take full credit for Dixie's success?
Yes.
Not at all, not at all.
So, but before I go too far, so I didn't hear from you, Deanne. Do you have suggestions of how you like to share your work? I mean, as you're turning out these new projects?
There's always a question when I'm working on a project, whether to share it or to keep it and wait till it's finished and then share it. And I think there are advantages to going each way, and it's something, it's always evolving. I'm always making decisions about what to do. In some ways, if you're sharing it, you're getting people on board, they care about it, they see what you're doing, and then some leads sometimes come from that. But you are kind of putting it out there little by little rather than saving it as a big project to unveil. And it depends if you're working with a client as well. If you're working with a client, they don't want you to put it out until they have first published it.
So, Matthew, back to these one-on-one connections and relationships and how you've fostered these long-term relationships, but you should explain. I mean, your career has evolved and you have continued to grow and change, and I've known you living in 3 different markets.
That's
so
very true.
can you explain a little bit about how when
The evolution of a
Yeah.
photographer. It is just that. But first, can I just touch on what Dan was just talking about in terms of putting work out there? Because I know many of you probably had that same fear of putting work out there and showing it.
Yeah.
And I know I had that same fear with a lot of my personal projects. But when you do break past your fear and you put it out there, amazing stuff happens. There have been times where I worked on a personal project and I've been fearful about putting it out there. And then I put it out there, and what comes back just blows you away. It can change your career. So don't be scared to share your work and put it out there. Now, getting back to your question,
Yeah.
in terms of building a career, like we first met in New York. When I lived in New York, I started my career in New York City. Then I moved to LA. I now live in Tokyo. It's wonderful to be able to do what you love anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where you are. Now, I was the guy who said I would never move out of New York. But here I am in Tokyo now. And trust me, I had fear about moving from New York to LA. I had fear about moving from LA to Tokyo. But I've lost nothing. I have clients like Aretha Franklin who hire me to come back to the States and shoot. Nothing's changed. And that's all because I have relationships with my clients. The first time they hire you, it's for your talent. Mm-hmm. But to hire you over and over and over again. I've been shooting Aretha now for 13 years. I've shot Oprah the first time in 1995. Anybody who's born after 1995 here? Wow. So it's all about relationships. It's everything.
But I have to say, that sounds amazing, but once you've moved to Tokyo, different language, different way of doing business, I know now that you always conquer every fear and every self-doubt, but how did you go
Not
about,
always.
but did they credit that you were the guy who'd photographed Tyra Banks and Oprah, or were you kind of starting over?
In many ways, it is starting over, moving to Tokyo, and that was the fear for me. That was the fear for me to move to a totally different market. But it was also an advantage because in Japan, there's more love for celebrity than even here. So it opened doors for me right away. So that fear I had was just in my head. Nothing changed by going to Japan. As a matter of fact, I think I work more in Japan than I ever worked here in the States.
But you should also explain why you moved to Japan. I mean, it was...
Well, my wife's Japanese, number one, but I went to visit, I love traveling. I went to visit Japan the first time in 1999 and fell in love with it. And always wanted to live there, but I was just scared to make the move. And then, you have one life, and we're photographers. We can do what we do anywhere in the world, if you think about it. The only fear that's holding you back is your fear. You can do anything in photography. Go anywhere. Have an incredible life. All you've got to do is get comfortable with sharing your vision, the way you see the world. We all see it differently. The more comfortable you get in showing how you feel about fashion or about documentary, about celebrity, about pictures, and putting your personal stamp on every picture, the more you'll work. That's how it works.
So you brazenly, I want to get to this next picture because is this one of your first?
One of my first pictures in Japan, yes. That was actually like the month before I moved there.
So it was a chance to grow creatively as well as in your business, right? And to change things a little bit.
Absolutely. Number one, I'm always looking for inspiration. And I think visually we are all looking for inspiration as photographers. And you're always pushing yourself and trying new things. And definitely being in a new market pushes you to get out your comfort zone and go out there on a limb. But when you do, you get the fruit. It has always worked for me. Every time I've been scared to do something and I pushed past that fear and tried it, I get more coming back. That's how it works.
And so has your way of presenting your work evolved through these evolutions of your career? Yeah?
It has evolved, but at the same time, I want to go back and say this. There's nothing as powerful as a personal meeting. Now, 30 years ago, I was trying to get a meeting and see an editor or an art buyer or any creative. And that still is number one. Even though today in this social world, we're all in every kind of platform to get our work out there. But nothing trumps a personal meeting. And them seeing your work with you there. Nothing beats that.
I don't know, I'm kind of intrigued. I have to say one of the questions that often comes up, though, is, well, what if you're shy? And another thing is, did it take you a while, each of you, to learn how to talk about your work? Like, not only to understand who you're about, but to be able to, like, explain it to groups like this or to explain it to clients. Is that a bit of a learning curve? And how do you learn it? Take it.
Ooh, yes. I'm still working on this, actually. I tend to it comes very natural for me to communicate with pictures. Obviously, we're all photographers. It has been a whole other thing to learn about how to speak about pictures and get up on stage and do speaking engagements and things like that. Never would I have ever thought that I would be, speaking. So that's definitely been a learning curve, and that was a huge fear of mine. I didn't do very well in speech class, but I've definitely sort of overcome that fear, kind of, a little bit. And it's just been a lot through working with people who are really good at speaking and trying to get better every time I do it, just like photography. And really just putting yourself out there is the biggest thing. It's been definitely a challenge to learn that craft, and I'm still learning that craft. So
I think it's hard. It can be intimidating when you meet with clients, but I can tell you guys are always sort of yourselves in every situation. But for all this positive talk, I do have to ask each of you in turn, are there particular challenges that you've encountered in your career? Any thoughts on that, Deanne?
Absolutely. If photography was that easy, we'd all be doing it, right? At every step of my career, there have been challenges. When I first got out of college, I graduated from the Academy of Art in San Francisco. I got a BFA in photography. I wanted to work at the San Francisco newspapers. And it was a challenge to get in there. And it took a lot of perseverance, and I just couldn't give up. So that was the first big challenge. Then I get on staff there, and I really had more of an art photography background coming from an art school. Mm-hmm. So I had to figure out photojournalism, on the streets. And, just figure out the ethics of photojournalism and documentary work. And every day there are challenges with the kind of work, with any of the work we do. You have to break through these barriers. You have to figure out how to make a human connection, build relationship on every assignment that I work on. As Matthew's been talking about, relationships are really the most important thing in the work that I do. That's why I try to do this work behind the scenes with athletes. But it's challenging to put them at ease and to get into their world, let them into their lives. So when I went freelance, that was another huge challenge. So, all along the way, and plus, when I think about the sports work I do, I was photographing action, and I'd be there on the sidelines. And, it would be generally me and mostly male photographers there kneeling on the sidelines with a long lens. I did almost die once. A huge player almost crashed into me. I was waiting a little bit too long to get a photo, and he was a 49er player, and I looked up and he's running directly at me full speed. So I'm trying to move from the position of kneeling to standing to get out of the way. And next thing I know, he's right in front of me, and he just, instead of crashing into me, he just put his arms under mine, lifted me up, and kept running all the way to the stands. So, yeah, challenges of being on the sidelines and, being, a lot of times I would be the only woman in that, on the sidelines. And, so it was just a matter of, I just had to prove myself that, I can do this too. So, yeah, just every step along the way, there's been challenges.
Challenges? Times you had to prove yourself, Dixie?
Oh, yes, absolutely, all the time, constantly. I feel like as a photographer, you're always faced with all kinds of different challenges, and if you can figure out a way to become an expert problem solver, that's definitely a huge, huge part of photography, because you never know what kind of situation you're going to get, thrown into. For instance, I was shooting a job for an airline company, and it was a private jet type of company, and they had given me a shot list, and I was prepared for all the shots that they had on the shot list, and I arrived. And the last shot, they added one on. They always do this. Clients are notorious for adding on, shots at the end of the day. They wanted to have me stand in the center of the runway while an airline flies over me, and I'm catching it as it flies over me. I don't know if you guys have ever stood in the middle of a runway while an airplane flies directly over you, but it is one of the most surreal and scary experiences I've ever encountered. So much so that I missed the shot because I was so flabbergasted. Like, my hat flew off. I was so stunned by the whole situation, having an airplane fly at me, that I missed it, and they had to circle back around once again in order for me to get the picture. It's just one of those moments where you just have to learn. And the biggest thing with photography is, if you're given something or an assignment that you don't think you're really quite prepared for yet, always take it. Always go for it and figure it out after the fact, because that is part of the journey, and whatever it is, you will learn from it, even if you don't do a great job, which I end up usually always learning something, or the client is super happy with the result. So that's kind of the biggest thing about photography, is you're going to be thrown in situations that you don't quite feel 100% prepared for, but go for it.
Yeah, I got to say, I was not expecting these physical dangers as part of your challenges. I was thinking, but Matthew, you some challenges, and what's your recommendation
for? Yeah, challenges for sure. As a photographer, it's not going to be easy all the time. As a matter of fact, almost every job is going to challenge you in some way. Whether it's about who you are as a person or the assignment, you'll have challenges. I was supposed to be shooting a job of a celebrity yesterday. And right at the last, this happens, if you shoot celebrities, get used to this. It's been 30 years now. It always happens. And I'm not even shocked when it happens anymore, but at the very last minute, something will change. So I'm here to shoot the celebrity, and they change the date. So I live in Tokyo. I gotta fly back to photograph her. But that happens all the time. So challenges are part of the game in photography. Whether it's about the assignment or pre-production or a problem with the client, you will have challenges. Get used to that. But you're always problem solving. That's the business. But the plus side of that is, you are in charge of your life, your career. While your other friends are doing a 9-to-5, you're living the dream. That's what this is. So the challenges, forget about it. It's part of it. But they only make you better, stronger, and you can overcome them. Trust me.
They're fearless, these guys. I have some questions for the panel, but I'm hoping to hear some questions from you. So we have a mic there on a stand. How about this gentleman? He's running to you, sir.
Should I stand? Should I stand or should I sit?
Stand, we'll hear you better.
How you doing? First, I want to thank you for this. This is really helpful. We appreciate you guys talking like this. I just want to know, what's the best for all three of you? What's the best single piece of advice you've gotten for how to take a good shot? Just very simple. Was it like always leave more headroom, always look down at the subject, something like that? I don't know.
I would say when you're photographing, look at every single thing that's in the frame, from corner to corner to corner to corner. And don't keep anything in there that's extraneous. Try to make your compositions as clean as possible. Always be watching the background. And sometimes you can even compose from the background forward. Find a great background and let the foreground come into that. So just really clean and really look at everything that's in your frame, edge to edge.
I'll make it simple. Every great picture has a hero, but it's up to you to find out what's the hero in the picture. Look for the hero in your picture.
And I would say learn the rules of photography and composition and then have fun breaking them. Sometimes the most amazing shots break all the rules of photography, and that's what make them unique. That's why you scroll through fashion magazines and you see images that are, overblown out or things, but those are sometimes the things that make those pictures so unique, and it makes people remember them. So, it's endless. Break the rules and have fun with it.
Questions? Yes?
Yes, I'd like to say thank you for being here and sharing your experiences with us. My question is more of a technical one. There's a lot of changes in the industry. You've got drones, there's virtual reality. How does that impact your profession, or do you see it as necessary as incorporating it in what you do, or are you going to basically stick to still with the DSLR type of thing?
Yeah. Anyone want to talk about how technical changes, new techniques in photography has influenced you? Dixie, do you want to say anything about moving into motion, for example?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So much of the industry is going towards video, and I am slowly making that transition. I've directed a few TV commercials and slowly going that way. So I think it's really important in the industry to adopt new technologies, for instance, drones. And even if you're not a master yet at those technologies, find people that are and team up with them. That's a lot of what I do, especially in video. When I direct video, is teaming up with people that are a master in that craft and then working with them in collaborative kinds of ways. So that's a good way to learn and get into it.
I don't think it. Oh, there we go. Dixie, as a fashion photographer, how were you able to get in front of your clients when you started in the industry?
Sorry, you said how was I able to get in front of clients?
Yeah, like how did you get your work in front of your clients to be recognized?
Yes, that is always a challenge. And when I was first starting out, for instance, when I went to LA, I did a lot of cold calling. I cold called ad agencies that I thought my work would fit with, magazines, and it would take about 20 calls to get one in-person meeting. So I started doing that.
That was good, 20.
What'd
That's
you say?
it? Just 20?
Just 20 calls to get one meeting.
That's good.
So I did a lot of that, and that really helped. And then once you do a job for a bigger client, a lot of times the word will start to get out a little bit quicker. I did my first job for a shoe company, actually, Florsheim Shoes, and we shot it in LA. So that art director ended up referring me for jobs down the line. So it's kind of like building blocks. And then once you start getting this word of mouth advertising kind of circulating around, you'll get more and more jobs. It kind of spirals from there, I'd say. But it's constant hustle, constant in this industry.
Never stops.
Yeah.
And anyone else about the advice on how to figure out who is best to cold call or who is best to pitch your work to?
I would say it's one thing. One problem that I see that young photographers do is try to look for work that they don't enjoy doing, but they think they can do that work. That's a mistake. Do the work that you love doing and look for clients that fit into that genre of work. You
And so-
can't fake in this industry. You can't fake that you like something. People know it. So do what you enjoy, and you'll get more work.
And also about, we talked about relationships, how important they are, building our relationships
Yeah.
with our clients or with the people that we photograph. It's also important to build those same relationships with clients. And a great place to do that are events like this and workshops where you meet these editors and art directors and you spend time with them. And once they've had a conversation with you, they feel comfortable with you, they know that they can trust you, and it's much easier to reach out to them at that point.
Yep.
For instance, you could go to trade shows that are not necessarily photography trade shows, but ad agency trade shows, and just kind of getting out to things and social events where your clients are actually hanging out at and getting to know them as a person as opposed to just work related. Those are the kind of things that will get you more and more work. I think that's a really big part of
Hands
it.
down.